Hello. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today for the first session of the discourse program at CTM, or first session for today. I'm very excited to kick off today's program with a two-part session that explores temporal dichotomies and speculative mythologies. Both of the artists that we will hear from today work with the digital possibilities of today, but also look back into ideas, mythologies, folklore traditions rooted in the past. The session takes place as two talks, each immediately followed with a Q&A session. And we'll begin with Yewande Adeniran, artist named Ifeoluwa, that we're very happy to have back at the festival. And Yewande will explore the role of the drum in Yoruban traditions in Nigeria and weave the lineology into present-day techno culture. Following that, we will have the Italian artist Giulia Benedicta, artistic name NZIRIA, who will be exploring Neapolitan culture and more broadly Southern Italian cultures and reinterpreting the narratives through a queer lens. Both of the sessions will be moderated by the culturator Aida Baghernejad, to whom I pass the word now.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much for having me again. Just a few words about Yewande. Yewande is a multidisciplinary artist, writer, and academic. You can find their byline everywhere, from Vice over the Wire to Galdem and everywhere. They are best known for heading Intervention, a traveling DJ and production workshop for women and marginalized people, and run their own label, Party. And last year, they were already a speaker at CTM. So welcome, Yewande. The stage is all yours.
Thank you. Is it possible to have the... Yeah, brilliant. So this is my presentation. It's multiple temporalities, Yoruba drum signaling, and contemporary dance music. So this presentation will be focused around 3 tracks. The first is Fellow Kuti Zombie. Then I'll be speaking about speaker musics, black nationalists, sonic weaponry, and then ending with More Mothers, analog fluids of sonic black holes. So to begin this presentation, I thought it would be best to start right at the beginning. So this is the slave port in Baghernejad, Nigeria, and it's called the Point of No Return. And as you can see, it's in English. Nobody there spoke English, heard English. And this moment of their first encounter of whiteness is really violent, because this is the moment where they became black, because before then, there wasn't such a thing as black, because it was just people in West Africa living, thriving, building communities. But at this moment, black became a racial capitalist system, socially, politically. And at this point, this is where their histories became fractured, and generational trauma became a thing, and hybrid identity, which is what we see today, and is also what has heavily influenced a lot of dance music that we see. This is just a picture of Fela. So I'm going to play the track Zombie. But so the whole album is about 46 minutes long, so I'm just going to play 3 minutes.
Zombie, oh zombie. Zombie, oh zombie. Zombie, oh zombie. Zombie, oh zombie. Zombie not go unless you tell him to go. Zombie. Zombie not go stop unless you tell him to stop. Zombie. Zombie not go turn unless you tell him to turn. Zombie. Zombie not go think unless you tell him to think. Zombie. Zombie, oh zombie. Zombie, oh zombie. Zombie, oh zombie. Zombie, oh zombie. Zombie not go unless you tell him to go. Zombie. Zombie not go stop unless you tell him to stop. Zombie. Zombie not go turn unless you tell him to turn. Zombie. Zombie not go think unless you tell him to think. Zombie. Zombie, oh zombie. Zombie, oh zombie. Zombie, oh zombie. Zombie, oh zombie. Tell him to go straight. Na joro jara joro. No break, no jam, no sense. A joro, jara, joro. Tell him to go kill. A joro, jara, joro. No break, no jam, no sense. A joro, jara, joro. Tell him to go quench. A joro, jara, joro. No break, no jam, no sense. A joro, jara, joro. Go and kill. Go and die. Go and quench. Put up all the verse. Go and quench. Go and kill. Go and die. Put up all the verse. Go and die. Go and quench. Go and kill. Put up all the verse. Joro, jara, joro. So be when I one way. Joro, jara, joro. So be when I one way. Joro, jara, joro. So be when I one way. Joro, jara, joro. Whoa. Attention, big match, slow match, left turn, right turn, up turn, double up, salute, open your hand, stand at ease, fall in, fall out, fall down, dead ready. Attention, quick match, slow match, left turn, right turn, up turn, double up, salute, open your hand, stand at ease, fall in, fall out, pause. Order.
That was the track Zombie by Ifeoluwa. So what's important to realize at this moment is there were simultaneous different music revolutions happening. So you have this high life, then you have Afrobeat, then you have jazz. And this was the cross-cultural diasporas interlinking. So you had the US doing this, you had Nigeria doing this, you had Ghana, you had Zimbabwe, you had South Africa, then you have England, and then you have all these different simultaneous sonic revolutions happening. Because the way that Black people have managed to survive all this hardship is through music. And so you listen to this song and it's really upbeat, it's really happy, it's really joyful, because that is how people have managed to survive, especially during slavery. You have all the different protest songs, you have like Wade in the Water, you have all these things that are not only just music, but are bits of oral history. And so for this track, this is when he was at his most critical of Nigerian army. So post-independence, there was a power vacuum once the British left. And basically there was like another scramble for power, which actually in many ways mimics the scramble for Africa that happened in 1884. And he recorded this album. He basically went back to his hometown and he revisited parts of Yoruba history and culture that had basically, the British had forced people to abandon in favor of whiteness, in favor of assimilation, and he said no. And he also directly said to the Nigerian government, that the military, which is pretty much how the country is run today, that we cannot drive the British out and then basically have a similar system of power in, because then we're not actually liberated. And because Pan-Africanism was taking hold, like you have Thomas Sankara at the same time, preaching all these socialist values, he was actually very critical of the country moving towards right-wing ideology. And then when we fast forward to 1989, he then teams up with Egypt 80 to release Beast of No Nation, which is an anti-apartheid song. So we can see that music, no matter what is happening, there is like knowledge of other similar movements in like across Africa. And then when we again go to the US, you have Angela Davis, who was doing a similar thing within academia. Like there's always these conversations that's happening between music and also academia. And I actually trace this to what I consider one of the most crucial moments, which is actually in 1935, where African Americans from New York, Chicago, and Boston, and Detroit volunteered to fight for Ethiopia against the Italians. And this was like a real awakening for a lot of people, because white US Italians were allowed to go back to Italy to fight on behalf of Italy, but African Americans were not allowed to go to Italy to fight on behalf of Ethiopia. And anyone who actually tried to go was either imprisoned or like brutally murdered and things like that. And so we see this is the moment that people really understand that the fight for liberation involves all of us, but also at every point, because of its like potential, it's completely stopped. And this is also when a lot of the different sounds started merging. So this is when jazz became huge as well, because people are like, okay, so there's people from all these different cities in America, and it's like, what are they doing? Like, how are they surviving? And then we then see elements of jazz in this track here. And to go directly back to the track, so I was reading a linguistic called John Longshore Austin, who described the album as performative utterance. And when I was doing my research, a lot of the Western academia basically didn't understand it, because they're waiting for these pop moments of like a traditional music theory structure. They were like, oh, the beat is offbeat, we don't understand it. Can we really have it on the same level as Western music? For example, they were like, no, classical music is like the pinnacle of everything, and it's a pinnacle of like society and civility. And because they really thought this, they then thought things like high life basically was for degenerates, especially because they were critical of whiteness and of the British. But what I really liked about the tracks was the trumpets, the passionate drums, the Yoruba backing vocals, the call and response nature, kind of like revisiting the traditional Nigerian structure of music, but giving it a modern twist. And I actually felt it was really invigorating. So it made me feel energetic. It made me feel like, okay, so what is this person saying? How can I get involved? Like, what is going on? Rather, I find that in the West, when there's music to do with like really somber topics, really hard topics, it's really dark music, like really dreary, a lot of low end, a lot of lower notes. And I actually find that psychologically, that actually impacts how you respond to an event. So if you have this sort of music that has higher notes, your brain automatically has a more positive feeling, and that gives you more energy. So next, I'll be speaking about speaker music. So if I play this track. So I thought it would be really important to show the track list from the album, because if you have a look, it kind of explains just the position of black people in America now. So if you look through it, you can see America Case Bay, The Man Not, Techno's Liberating Technology that I just played, and all these tracks here. So I give everyone a minute to read it. So everyone remembers June 2020, a period in time I actually wish I could forget, because there's like a really violent thing of suddenly realizing black people go through these things, popularizing it on social media, forgetting, and then having this cycle. Like, it really psychologically damages a lot of black people. And we generally do have a form of PTSD just from being black, just all the different violence that a lot of people don't see. There's like a lot of invisible injustices that if you're not racialized as black, you just won't experience. And a lot of the discourse was around structural racism and how it manifests in society and interpersonal relationships, which was great. But it just sort of, it just kind of like snow, just melted away to just be forgotten, with nothing really growing anew. And what I really liked about this album is you're confronted straight away with the reality of it. It doesn't really coddle anyone's feelings. It doesn't hold back. It doesn't say, oh, okay, so like, we like experience oppression, and if you don't mind, can you? No, it's like, we face it, this needs to end or else. And I think that's a really powerful thing. And what it does confront in this is that acts of violence are not only physical, they can be assaults to your mind and to your being. And the idea of implicit bias is dismantled within this album, because it's also, after 400 years, there's no way that if you look at abolition, the whole movement, if you look at the civil rights movement, if you look at what happened straight away in the 80s and compare it to now, it's a similar thing. So you do have these moments of time which reflect one another, which are pretty much the same, but we're all different faces. And that's an example of multiple temporalities, where I can exist now, and if things are happening to me, when I speak to my mum, she's like, oh, a similar thing happened to me when I was in Washington in the 80s. I'm like, what? And I speak to someone else who's older who was like, oh, and because my parents remember decolonization, you speak to like grandparents and they're like, yeah, so this exact same thing. So we're always experiencing the same history, repeating it, but generationally, while having generational trauma. And also we manage, as everyone does, to exist at the same time. So we're always suspended in this kind of like temporal loop of blackness. And then when I have kids, they'll have like the same thing. And that's also to do with the fact that black people are considered pre-modern beings. So when people speak about different parts of Africa, Caribbean, even black people living in the global north, they're referred to in the past tense a lot, which is a really, really odd thing, because we exist in the present. And another thing that is confronted in this is the complicity of black people to partake in this system. And this has always been a thing, because it was black people who told the slave masters where people are hiding, otherwise how would they know? And it's been the same thing. And like, you've probably seen the news in the past week, like it was black police officers as well as white police officers who obviously killed him. And it's that same thing of people, and it's obviously the famous quote, your silence will not protect you, but people really believe it because you're conditioned that if you conform, if you do the right thing, if you're black but not too black, then you'll be protected, and it's just not the case. And a quote that I really like is from W.E. Du Bois in The Souls of Black Folk, and he states this isn't possible. And this came out well over 100 years ago, and it still rings true. So the quote is, "Lo, we are diseased and dying. Cry the dark host, we cannot write. Our voting is vain. What need of education, since we must always cook and serve?" And the nation echoed and enforced his criticism, saying, "Be content to be servants and nothing more. What need of higher culture for half men?" And that's exactly what we're still seeing now. It's like when we speak of glass ceilings, it's not glass ceilings for us, it's glass ceilings for white women, because we can only ever go to a certain level. And the socio-economic position that we're in is not by chance. It's through a carefully constructed mode of governing, policing, of every aspect of life. And so when we look at this track list, the immediate things that came to mind were redlining, voter registration denial for formerly incarcerated people, gentrification, underfunded schools in predominantly black neighborhoods, the prison industrial complex, healthcare bias, exclusion of participation in middle classes, career stalling through employment bias, and whitewashed education system. So I'm not sure if you've been following what's been happening in both England and the US. So in the US, they've actually taken African American studies off some of the programs in Texas, and now Florida's doing the same. In the UK, there's been a huge backlash to learn any black British history. Also, because I teach in schools sometimes, you actually can't teach kids about capitalism or socialism or anything like that. Like, it's just a word that you're not allowed to say to kids. And it really just shows you where we're going, especially with what is the far right taking hold across Europe. And so what I really liked about the track I just played, because it reminded me of the freedom songs that was sung, even though the drums were banned. So if we go back, and if I play it just a little bit longer. And so when you listen to the track, you can sort of hear like another world has been created, even though it sounds like what we know. And I found this really to be significant because it speaks to the kind of music construction that would have happened in pre-slavery, Yoruba religion especially, kind of like how the drums speak to each other. And you can also imagine like a conversation happening between the two. And I found techno generally, like when you look through the history, how they've managed to have like, in the early days, basic technology, the DIY approach, building this thing away from everything, saying, basically, fuck it, we're basically not gonna go down the route that you expect us to as black people, and we're gonna express ourselves through this different way. And this is directly at odds with Western culture, basically, because it expects us to do certain things, to be certain things. And when I relate to the same moment that I showed you earlier with the slave port, so that's the moment where the drums were banned. And so when we go to the 1980s and see there's like a reinterpretation of that, that's also another example of like a temporality. Because it's not that it was always banned, it managed to survive in all these different ways. So when you think of the plantation songs, it's always a call and response. And it's always that. And that's the same construction that techno has. And the reason why it was basically banned is because when they got to different parts of Nigeria, so this is before they put in the artificial borders that we see now, because before it was done by ethnic tribes. So all the Yoruba people would basically have their own area, which was actually partitioned by nature. And so one bit will have like palm trees, and that would be like, okay, cool, so we live here. And there'll be like a different flora thing, and they'll be like, okay, cool, we live here. And basically to communicate for anything, even if it was intertribal conflict or fighting, would be the drum. And so when you hear like a certain drum pattern, you'll be like, okay, shit, they're really gonna come for us soon. And there'll be that sort of thing. Or it'd be like, oh, you can also communicate to be like, oh, like there's something happening in the distance and we don't know what, and it was that thing. And that's actually what happened when the British and the Portuguese and the French started to arrive. People had no idea what was going on, obviously. And when, especially the British actually found out, they were so spooked out and so freaked out by this because they couldn't comprehend how these people were not speaking words. They were just like drumming a thing and someone else was responding. And so they banned it completely. And how the existence of Creole and Pidgin language happened was that basically they used to take people from different ethnic tribes and put them on boats next to each other so they couldn't communicate. So they'd be forced to learn English, forced to learn French, forced to learn German, Italian, and everything. And so the only thing they had to do was actually to make, once they got to the New World, was actually to make drums, because that's the only form of communication they actually had. And so now Yoruba exists as a multi-tonal language. So it's a tritonal language. And so if you hear a Yoruba person speak, you'll notice like different inflections. And that also mirrors the drums as well. And I also link this to Eastern Liberia, who also use drum coding and complex multitonal language as like a way of doing pretty much everything. And so they are one of the cultures that had two forms of linguistic communication, like two prominent ones, which I found to be really, really interesting. And then this sort of like dissipated along the Middle Passage. So the Middle Passage is probably one of the places in the world that is the most understudied. But a lot happens there. Like there's the creation of, as I was saying, Creole, Pidgin, fractured histories, people for the first time seeing the New World, and there's like the bits of Jamaica. So the reason why Trinidad and Jamaica have the music that they have is a Yoruba influence, like especially Trinidad. So just a little bit more about this track list. So I consider this to be a collage of spoken word in the form of poetry through the intricate drum placements, and especially his use of sound design and noise. Like it's very, very considered. Like it's not like he's making a peak time banger. He's like obviously like done his history, really thought about it and placed it very specifically, and you can definitely hear it. And especially, so he's like a sonic archivist. So he uses techno to present really complex historical events, especially referring to the effects of gentrification, urban planning that displaces Black individuals, to the fraught labor relations with capitalism. So if you look at the artwork, you can directly see that. So the artwork is pretty self-explanatory. So it features like a boat, industrialism. And what I believe he wants us to do with this album is to consider techno to be a liberating force, because especially for those of us living in Europe, techno is just like party music. It's just like we'll have a few beers, we'll go and dance and this and that. But that's not how techno started, and that's not what techno is for a lot of people. And the commodification of techno has actually led a lot of black people to be alienated from the same craft that was being used for liberation. And taking all this into account and his track list, I think there needs to be more national liberation, national renaissance, and the restoration of nationhood to the people, to the Commonwealth. So not what the British consider the Commonwealth, because that's obviously absolute nonsense, but Pan-Africanism. And we actually do see that a lot more. So a lot of the dance music I play is from all across Africa and the Caribbean. And I really noticed like there was like another merging of cultures. So Gom is huge in Nigeria now, and it has been for like the last 5 years. And now it's been merged with Afrobeats. And now Afrobeats is huge in South Africa, and you kind of see this like cross-cultural African connections, which were not really allowed before because of the borders set by the Europeans. It was very much like, if the Dutch are in your country, that's it. Like you try and conform to that. The British are here, you try and conform to that. But now, because of the internet and like a resurgence of Black history, we're seeing that more and more. So the next one is More Mother.
No time down south, time held captive. No time down south, nobody knows what happened. Freedom at 13 o'clock, I'm still coming around the mountain. Freedom at 13 o'clock, drinking Jericho's wine from the fountain. Somebody running tell Moses, tell him that we lost out here. Somebody running tell God, tell him that we fucked out here. Somebody running tell Joseph, they say we at war out here. Somebody running find God, tell them that we fucked out here. No time down south, time held captive. No time down south, nobody knows what happened. Freedom at 13 o'clock, I'm still coming around the mountain. Freedom at 13 o'clock, drinking Jericho's wine from the fountain. Somebody running to Moses, somebody running to God.
So the reason why I picked this album is because More Mother looks at temporality. And we also can't consider Black artists in isolation, even though our music press would want you to think that. There's no linear, monolithic way of understanding Blackness and therefore anti-Blackness, and there are commonalities. So as we saw in Speaker Music's album, he directly challenges history over H, which is history, the linear kind of like progress narrative, sequence of events, with history, like the broader things of what has actually happened and what's actually occurred, because there's always a discrepancy between the two. And More Mother's album directly deals with erasure. And as we just heard in the track, she uses like a really traditional oral history construction. And she's also like a really, really key archivist, which is what I found from listening to the album. So this is actually the 5th track. Yeah, this is actually the 5th track on the album. And it completely refuses to be bound by Western modes of time. And so the words that you can hear in it is actually no time down south, time held captive, nobody knows what happened, freedom at 13th o'clock. And 13th refers to the 13th Amendment, which is which actually should have been the emancipation of all enslaved people, but it actually just turned into the prison industrial complex and the school to prison pipeline and all these different things. So she uses spoken word to directly vocalize oppression, because there's more than one ways for you to express that. So we see in speaker music, he uses very intricate drum patterns. More Mother directly tells you with words what it's all about. And it's really important that they both use sonic forms, because of the fact that Black people weren't allowed to read and write. They weren't allowed to write down what was happening. They weren't allowed to record history, which is why they're missing from the linear history and that progress narrative. We can't understand ourselves and different cultures by using the tools of the oppressor, because we just will never be free and we'll never be able to actually express ourselves through that way, because there's things that have happened during slavery and colonialism that actually can't be put into words. Like, you can't express verbally the brutality of what happened. Like, it's just not possible. And this is really, really, really important. So if you look at the track list, and I'll give everyone a minute to read it again. So within this album, More Mother manages to vocalize the discontent, confusion, and trauma experienced by the enslaved people who traveled across the Middle Passage to the New World. And it directly refers to the event where white people in power colonized time. Because the reason why we have a standardized clock is to do with capitalism. It's to do with regulating how much cotton, for example, was produced and being made. And that's the root of why we have time. And a really important moment is that when the end of slavery happened, it happened at midnight. It couldn't happen when it was declared. It had to happen at this specific moment on, like, just before the first day of the next year. And since then, it has been different European countries that have organized time. So if you look at the clock, if you look at different time zone, the central time is GMT, Greenwich Mean Time, and that is to me that's a very arbitrary point of time to have, because why is the British dictating exactly what the rest of the world do and the kind of time that they're confined to? And so what she does within her album is to reappropriate the master's clock and also the map, because the map itself is a very violent thing. Because basically, like, during the scramble for Africa, the 7 European countries basically, and it happened in Berlin, the Berlin Conference of 1884 to 1885, and they basically sat around, got a map which positioned Europe as the center of the world, and then just basically got probably a quill, because it's olden times, and just basically drew on the map, and regardless of who was living there, regardless of what was going there, the history, the culture. And basically, that's how they partitioned Africa. And then obviously for South America, it was the Catholic Church. like a similar thing, squabbling over land where people already exist. And so there's been like a resurgence in cartography and topography of especially people in the global south, redrawing the maps accurately. And when you see one of these contemporary maps, what I always find quite funny is the UK is like this big, because it is a really, really tiny island, and it kind of repositions in your mind who has dominance. And so you probably notice now that people don't really say people of colour, they say people of global majority, because we are the global majority. And those little linguistic shifts in language ultimately actually does change your psyche, because you change from being considered the minority to the majority, to realising there's so many other people around you. And a really important aspect that I got from More Mother's album was like the idea of rebirth and coming of age. So I'm 28, and I consider myself only coming of age now, because I've actually learned about Black history, why things happen to me, all this and that, and I can actually come into myself. But in the West, coming of age is at 18, around 18. And it's just a completely different thing. And so as Black people, idea of growth and rebirth, it's a continuous cycle. And so like in the next 10 years, I'll probably find out more Yoruba history that will connect me to my ancestors and to what's happening now. And I'll go through that rebirth again. But that moment started with the slide I showed you earlier, with the point of no return. So the last bit is on ontology, because the idea of temporality was first not configured, but written down in Western philosophy. And it asserts the idea that the imposed hierarchical forms of rationality and universality is a basis of understanding what it means to be human. And this idea of human is directly linked to normality and what's considered normal and what's considered man. And so when you read something and it says man, people automatically think a white man, because there's no prefix. So everyone else has a prefix. And a really important thinker that speaks about this is Fanon. And so he opts for a type of performance that is iterative and interrogative, and basically a repetition that is initiatory in stating a differential history that will not return to the power of the same. And that was written in 1964, I think. And it's the same conversations that I'm having today with other Black people. So it's again that continuous loop. And what is really important is that we continue to counteract Western Enlightenment as a pinnacle of thought, because once we put these people on a pedestal, anything that counteracts it is basically considered useless. And all our universalities, the continuous progressive myth of man, needs to be challenged at every aspect. Because what I consider Blackness to be is negation of whiteness, and with the Black individual only knowing that they are such because they are not white. The two bring each other into existence, and oppressive systems relying on this dependent binary for survival. Once the binary is dismantled and destroyed, as Black people, we can be reborn. Because white people only know they're white because they're not racialized, and Black people only know they're Black because they're racialized. And the two are dependent on each other. So you can trace this, and Fanon does this, and a lot of post-colonial theorists, to Hegel's master-slave dialectic, that the master needs the slave to be the master, otherwise he's just an ordinary man. And so that's the end of my talk. But you should support both of these artists, so I put their Bandcamp up there if anyone wants to write it down.
Thank you so much, Yewande, for this wonderful and illuminating talk. And we have a little bit of time still left for questions from the audience and also the audience in the cyberspace. So if there's any questions from you, I'll start with you. Otherwise, I will start with my questions so you have a bit more time to think, maybe. Yewande, there were so many thoughts that came up while I was listening to you, but I would like to start by talking about the intersection of tradition and modernity, or tradition and the current possibilities that technology brings us. How can they be used for conservation, and how can conservation become a subversive strategy?
So immediately I think back to the archive. So in London, there's the Black Archives, and you can submit like anything that you have. So for example, if I've got my mum's photos from when she was in Trinidad in the 80s, I can send that in. And basically you can start building your own narratives and history, which is completely missing. And that's only really possible because I can basically just scan it into my laptop and send it. So because of technology, it's actually become a lot more accessible. And so when I do some archiving myself, I have like a really DIY approach. Like I'm still like going to the library, into the dusty whatever, and you can actually digitize it. So that means that the stuff that I'm digitizing, people in, for example, Japan or like Spain and whoever can read it. So actually you're kind of disrupting a lot of the gatekeeping that happens and a lot of the barriers of access to knowledge. Because when I first started in academia, I could barely find anything on African countries, because you basically had to go to the British Library in central London, fill out a paper, go through the bureaucracy, kind of get a reference from this person, and then go and do it. But that's just not what's happening now. So it's been like a really exciting moment where, because of technology, a lot of younger people, like myself, are getting into archiving. So it used to just be like loads of old people and things like that. But now, yeah, it's a new generation.
Why? Why has the archive become so much more interesting for young people again?
Because it basically reflects our history as well. I trace this back to the queer archives. So if you look at the 60s and the different queer movements, there was like a queer archive. And that became especially important during the AIDS crisis, where people were just dying at alarming rates, and they had to really preserve their lives and their history. And so what we're seeing now is basically a continuation of that.
Thank you. Let's go back to the drum. The drum played, of course, a very central role in your talk. And I was wondering, is the drum a portal to a past that was to be erased? And how do artists like yourself and the ones you mentioned in your talk try to find again what was lost? Because there is no written histories due to the violent history of slavery and continued marginalization.
I think so, for sure. That's why Afrofuturist movements always also come in a cycle of resurgence. Because every generation, they then discover what has happened before, and then they then get excited, and it's like, oh, okay, so this is why we're here. And so, like, when I really thought to myself, why am I even in England? And my mum was like, British colonialism. I was like, what's British colonialism? And then you sort of like look into that, and you sort of find out who you are. And the drum became a really big thing, because once you start playing a drum and tactile playing it, you sort of imagine other people who were doing the exact same thing generations before you, and then your mind starts going, I wonder what they were doing. I wonder what was going on then. And it sort of transports you back as well.
But does the drum computer still give the same kind of connection to the past that maybe a Yoruba Igbin drum would have given?
I think so, because we always want to have technology at our disposal. So, for example, I can buy like a drum pattern set and then configure it and then tone it and then really easily have that. And I can Google, what were the drums they had in Zimbabwe, Google it, find out, find the sound, and then use it. Rather before, I wouldn't have had access to that. I'll just have access to what I can find in the community.
Does it still take up this? Does a drum computer, the way you described using it as a portal to the past, still serve the same purpose as a bridge between the sacred and the secular that the drums in African cultures before slavery did?
I think so, because if you consider it as like another multiple temporality, what I'm doing now, if I'm using the exact same sounds linguistically and construct it in that same way, kind of like away from traditional Western music theory, you can sort of like recreate and reimagine what was happening before and sort of like bring it into the 21st century.
Thank you. Is there any questions from the audience? Because I can keep going, but our time is also running out. So, questions? Yes. Anyone with the microphone? There's a question in the first row. Here.
Hi. I feel really shy to ask this question. I will see how it comes out of myself. I traveled a long time ago to Western Africa and learned before and there to play the djembe. And for me, it's one of the instruments. I play a lot of instruments, and it's one of the instruments that I feel very secure with and very happy with. The guy who taught me, he was like kind of angry with me as a white woman coming there, learning the drum, and then he was like, okay, you will for sure go back to Europe and teach the drum and earn a lot of money with it. I didn't do it, and right now I'm in a very nice process to come back to play the djembe, because well, there was a big different kind of process, because I feel it's an instrument with a lot of like calling and response, as you said as well. And I met a lot of people, like men, who like tried to made me silent. I felt also with this instrument. So I'm right now in the process to feel myself comfortable with my music and bringing my speech and everything as a woman. And at the same time in the process of like, okay, how can I handle this thing with my whiteness privilege? And yeah, well, I don't really know what to ask. Maybe you can just question, please. Yes. Maybe you have some tips for me to handle this kind of process. How I'm not getting into this. How is it called? Cultural and colonial
Appropriation.
Yes.
So I think the first thing is to think, why are you doing it? That's a question I think we should ask ourselves about everything. Why are we doing something? Are we doing it solely for the social capital, economic capital? And I also find that when there's respect for the music and where it's come from and the people, that shines through. So I have a lot of white friends who play a lot of explicitly black dance music, but they have such an appreciation and respect, and they know when to take a step back and when to let others shine through. And also a big thing I'm into at the moment is sharing resources. So if you know a black person who wants to learn this, you kind of share that skill rather than gatekeeping it. That's a big thing that I find in dance music, especially with there being so much technology and it being expensive. It's people with more resources, which is middle class people. Most middle class people are white, and it kind of follows that same cycle. And it depends if you're viewing it from like a voyeuristic perspective as well. So if you're playing it just like, ooh, like this is a fun thing, or if you're playing it like, wow, this is an incredible instrument that has loads of history, and how can I share that history so other white people can respect that history? So I think that's really important.
Thank you so much, Yewande.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for this talk and for answering my and our questions. And I heard that you have to run because you're also DJing today, or you're a part of a radio show at Refuge Radio. So it's been a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thanks.
And the audience, please stay or grab a coffee and come back, because we directly have the next talk coming up with NZIRIA. And yes, stay tuned. We will continue in just a few minutes, 5 minutes. Enough time for a coffee. Thank you so much. I hope my questions were okay. I had one more because I thought this idea of commodification of techno, which you mentioned, was so And welcome back. And those who are still outside can slowly move back into the space because we're continuing our double feature today with the second talk by NZIRIA, also known as Tula Benedicta. Welcome.
Thank you.
All the way from Naples. NZIRIA's debut, Exhybrid, came out last year on the Bergamo-based label Never Sleep, and I can absolutely recommend listening to it. I loved it. And the project's name comes from the Neapolitan term for child's tantrum when they're tired, and that really resonated with me because that's me very often. NZIRIA interprets forms and themes of the southern Italian genre of Neomelodica with a queer lens, and in this talk they will discuss gender, identity in Neapolitan music and culture, and the origins of Neomelodica rituals, and how traditions can be translated into a contemporary context. I'm very excited to listen to this talk, and yes, the stage is all yours.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. My name is Tula Benedicta, and I'm an Italian artist based now in Naples, which is the south of Italy. But I was born in the north of Italy in a little town called Ravenna. And the project that I'm working on, the project that I'm presenting also today, is called NZIRIA, which is a project of hybridization of a specific genre coming from the Neapolitan music that is called Neomelodic music, mixed with other abstract, very far away genres like contemporary electronic music, and with influences from hardcore gabba and the hardcore gabba and rave scene from the 90s. So today I'm going to introduce you to some of my research that I've been doing for the last few years. It's a research not only based on music, but also on social and anthropological and traditional point of view related to the culture of Naples that eventually led me to create this project that is NZIRIA. So first of all, I need to give you a little bit of introduction of where we are geographically and a bit of context. So, yeah, okay. So, first of all, hard neomelodic. Hard neomelodic is the term that I decided to use to describe my music. It's basically composed by two words, which is hard and neomelodic. Neomelodic obviously comes from the reference of neomelodic music, which I'm going to introduce you to that in a bit. And hard, of course, I took it from the hardcore word as a hard experience of power and powerful expression and emotional. And with an emotional sphere. So to me, it was quite natural, the connection between the neomelodic music with hardcore music, because even though they sound and they look very, very distant to each other, I think they have both a sort of like connection because they're very bold and strong, and they are passionate, and they talk to the emotional sphere of the people. They are not very conceptual. They're just very natural, and they play with instinct. So this is why I thought this is going to be this is the word that has to somehow merge them, those two apparently distant genres all together. And of course, a new gender identity shaped through sonic mutations, because Neomelodic has a very specific pattern of themes and of behavior and of rules and representations inside that genre that has been reiterating for decades. And so far I wanted to distance myself and change it, because I do consider myself a Neomelodic singer, because I do sing in Neomelodic, and I do reiterate some of the models that somehow the Neomelodic has, but I totally decided to change them because they didn't reflect my personality. But we'll see it soon. So this is Naples. It's located in the south of Italy. It's in the west coast, and it's on the sea, as you can see. This is a very Shutterstock photo, but somehow I wanted to give you a little glimpse on what we're talking about, because I think that also the geography and the local nature and environment that surrounds the city somehow influences the personality and the social aspects of the population in Naples. So we have the sea, and we have that mountain, which is not a mountain but is a volcano that is called Vesuvio. If you're familiar with the story of Pompeii, that was completely destroyed by the eruption of the Vesuvio, that's the volcano that we're talking about. And I give you this picture because this is connected somehow with the image of the Neapolitan classical music that I'm going to introduce in a bit. So when I will mention about the postcard image of Naples, you have to think about this. Naples is a very complicated city. It's beautiful, but at the same time it can be very harsh and hard to live in, because it is located in the south of Italy. So I have to make a premise. So Italy is very rich in terms of region and cities, and every region has its own culture and dialect. So in Naples, the dialect spoken is very strong, and it's very particular, and it's called the Neapolitan. It's considered as a total different language, and people from the north wouldn't understand a word of Neapolitan, or coming from other regions. So this obviously leads to a sort of like let's say, I mean, like, it's like when you enter the Neapolitan society by just, being able to understand and talk in Neapolitan, it's just like you're entering another dimension, and you can be in the underworld, not the underworld, but I mean also in the underworld, but you can access different levels in the culture in this city, which, yes, I think it can happen in other cities as well, but in Naples is very, very prominent, this characteristic. So, yeah. So it's located in the south of Italy, which is very different from the north. The north of Italy has been always very industrialized compared to the south, which is much more poorer and lacks of jobs opportunities. So a premise that I have to make is that because there are not many chances to get a proper job with a contract or with like normal rules, somehow this developed to the birth of new illegal activities just to make profit and money. And of course, I'm talking about criminality that probably from out of Italy, it's called mafia. But in the south of Italy, it's much more different. Every region has its own gang, let's say. So in Sicily, we have the mafia, we have the Cosa Nostra clan that moved to the States and then connected to the Godfather idea. And in Puglia, we have the Sacra Corona Unita, Mafia del Gargano. In Calabria, we have the 'Ndrangheta. And in Campania, which is the region where Naples is, we have the Camorra. So if if you've ever watched the TV show and the film Gomorra, that is connected to, that is talking about the Camorra in Campania. The other premise is that those illegal activities are very prominent in the territory connected to them, but they actually operate everywhere. So you think that they're just in Naples? No, they're not. They're pretty much even in Berlin. They can be literally anywhere, especially now. But, of course, they're much more transparent and much more hidden in the rest of the cities. While, for example, if you go to Naples, you can perceive that there's something going on. You can perceive on a daily basis, you can see that somehow there's something happening behind. I'm telling this because this is much connected with the Neomelodic music, not much with the classical Neapolitan music, but with the Neomelodic music. It's extremely connected, and I think it's still an important premise to make. And of course, in my hard Neomelodic genre, I'm of course rejecting all of this. But for example, in a track that I wrote, which is called Pensiero, the idea, I got inspired by one of the tracks that could be related to this, and I'm going to talk to you about that soon. So, okay, so today I'm going to introduce you to the origins of Neomelodic music, Neomelodic music and social marginality, gender identity in Neapolitan music, femminelli and rituals around them, tarantella and hardcore, the ritual of performance, and then eventually some conclusions about what I did, and then Q&A, whatever. If you have any questions, happy to reply. So, the origins of Neomelodic music. So the Neomelodic music, the Neapolitan music started much longer ago, in the 13th century in Naples, and then from Naples it spread it all over the region of Campania, and it was much connected to the cultural world. So most of them were propitiatory choral invocations and propitiatory songs directed to the sun, because of course the sun was playing a major role on the agricultural activities, and so there were just requests and prayer to the sun to come out and to, of course, help the gathering of the fruits, vegetables, whatever. So it started like that, and then obviously it got an evolution. So so in the 1880, this is where it's considered the birth of the classical Neapolitan song, which is different from the Neomelodic song, and I'll tell you why. So it started before the 19th century, and these songs were songs written in dialect, Neapolitan dialect, and they were written by people coming from the middle class. These people were poets, these people were rich people, people that had an education, and they could write in dialect and in Italian. But so they were coming from a very elite, let's say. And some of the interprets of this genre are named right there, like Sergio Bruni, Roberto Murolo, and Renato Carosone. Those belong to different decades, but those are some of the most popular ones. And during the time, at some point, in the first festival of this Neapolitan music, which became very, very popular during the time, was called the Festa di Piedigrotta, which means Piedigrotta party. Piedigrotta is just a little neighborhood in Naples, near the beach. And every year it was gathering all the most famous and popular singers from the Neapolitan song. So I'm going to introduce you to This is Sergio Bruni, and this is Nasere Maggio, which is a very famous Neapolitan song.
Quando viene appuntamento, guarda mare, guarda di fronte, si ti parla non risponde, stai distratto come che, io ti tengo dinto col, sono sempre innamorato. Ma tu invece pensa nada e tu stai scordando me. Quando si dice si tiene la mente, non sa da fa morire no coramante. Ma diciste sì, nasere maggio, e mo di no coraggio, e me la sa.
Okay, so I'm going to quickly show you also Roberto Murolo di Cetencelle Buio.
Che tutta vita mia
Sounds are all the same. Guitar
and
the voice. There's nothing else. The guitar can also be replaced to another instrument born in Neapolitan music called mandolino, which is the one that you always see like in the Italian representations, like pizza and mandolino. It's coming from here. And the way of singing, of course, this is all sung in dialect. It's a very clean dialect. It's a noble dialect. It's like the British from the Queen. And but still, like, you can start understanding the approach to singing. It's quite passionate, it's quite melancholic, and it's struggling a bit. So I think I have to speed up a bit because otherwise we finish tomorrow. So in the 50s, coincided with the arrival of television, the Piedigrotta Festival ended in the meantime, because with the arrival of the television, two big festivals in Italy became extremely popular. One was the Festival of Sanremo, which is still happening, actually. It's going to be happening very soon now. And the other one is the Festival of Naples, which was happening every year in the city of Naples, and was supposed to be a replacement of the Festival of Piedigrotta Fest. And what happened? It happened that at some point, Sanremo Festival started inviting Neapolitan singers, because the Neapolitan music became quite popular in Italy and also outside Italy. So they decided to invite also Neapolitan singers, and the Neapolitan singers from the other side, because they saw so much resonance, they decided to start adjusting their music to the rest of the Italian scene. So somehow they became much more generalistic and standardized, let's say, to the common Italian sound. And they started losing their own authenticity that was related to the type of music, the genre. So this eventually brought a sort of loss of interest in the Neapolitan scene, and eventually it brought to the end of everything. So in the Festival of Naples, the Naples Festival ended in 1971, because of other business, gangs, whatever. But yeah, eventually ended, and so that is considered the end and the decline of the classical Neapolitan music. In the meantime, in the 1960s, around the 1960s, another genre coming still from the Neapolitan scene started rising again. It was an older genre, started around the first century, the 1910, 1920s, and it comes from theater. It doesn't come from just music, but it comes from the theater scene. So it's happened in theaters first, and then it moved, with the arrival of the television, it moved on the TV. And it's called the sceneggiata. The sceneggiata is a performative genre, alternative singing and acting and melodrama. So in Neapolitan, when we say, please, don't make a drama of it, we say, non fa una sceneggiata. Don't do a sceneggiata, don't make it, because it's too much. It's very melodramatic, it's very passionate, it's too heavy to digest, it's too much. And yeah, came back into vogue. And of course, the themes were much, much different from the themes written and treated in the classical Neapolitan music. Classical Neapolitan music was just about the postcard of Naples, the beauty of Naples, the sea, I love you, sentimentalism, these kind of things. While the sceneggiata starts talking about something different, something that does exist in Naples, that has always existed in Naples, but no one has ever talked about. But at the same time, this part wanted to be represented because it was resonating with this type of being so dramatic. And when talking about the underworld, I'm talking about Camorra, I'm talking about these kind of things. So we're talking about criminality, we're talking about love, but not the sentimental love, not the happy love, not the happy ending one. We're talking about the crime of love, about betrayal, about cheating, about not paying respect, about the figure of the man that is boss from Camorra and wants to be respected by his gang, by the rest of the people in town, and by his woman. So this is, of course, a model that somehow resonated not only in the city of Naples, but I think in the whole south of Italy. Somehow this picture is still, unfortunately, reiterating. It's still happening. So, but this is basically a trace of it, let's say. And okay, so as you can see, I'm not talking about albums, but I'm talking about movies. So because we're in the 60s and the television is quite popular now, instead of theaters, they moved to the big screen. And so they started filming films called, for example, Carcerato, which means in prison. Il Mamma Santissima, that means I don't know how to translate it, to be honest. It's an invented word that is you can split in between mom and holy, super holy. So extra holy mom, something. Yeah. And here is from Corleone to Brooklyn, and the last guapo, which is guapo is another dialect word. It's like a dodgy guy, like from mafia, that knows how to steal and knows how to deal with Camorra and like with the little crimes, let's say. As you can see in the top of this first one, Io stongo carcerato e mamma more. I am in prison and mom is dying. This is pretty interesting because this is the mom, the one with the hands like this. And in this film, Mario Merola, which is the person in all these, the main character in all these films, goes to prison because there is a mistake, and eventually he gets arrested, and I don't remember how he ends, but yeah, there's this cry and lament of Mario Merola that starts singing in the middle of the prison to everyone, saying, "Io sono carcerato e mamma muore," and mom is dying in the meantime. So there's this strong connection between the figure of the mom, which is still a big cliche of the Italians still. So you have to understand that from the outside, from the inside, to us it's easy to understand whether someone is from Naples, someone is from Trieste, someone is from Bologna, and we're all different. But from the outside, I realize, and as an Italian person, as a half Neapolitan person, that most of the cliches on Italians, it's crazy, but most of them, they cannot reconnect to the Neapolitan figure. This kind of figure, which is, of course, not applicable to all the other things, but it's interesting somehow that those things came out, but they basically just work in a little niche in Naples, let's say. But okay, so let's speed up. So this guy is called Mario Merola, and you can see from the drawings as well and the gestures, he's been kissed, his hand has been kissed. He's a boss. There's a lot of struggle and pain, and this is basically the beginning of the new Neomelodic music. Mario Merola is considered the pioneer just before the coming of the Neomelodic music, because he came back with the sceneggiata and eventually merged with some of the Neomelodic into the Neomelodic scene. Gonna quickly show you some videos from Mario Merola. Yeah. So this is a scene from the movie Guapparia. This is Mario Merola. Malavita, which is underworld, criminality. He's so theatrical, drama, drama, drama. He's singing a serenade. The idea of the serenade comes from here. And he's singing to this woman, which is married to another man. He's dressed like a boss from Camorra. Everyone is like shocked because he's doing something that he cannot do. He's like provoking the other man. And this night I want to intoxicate your night. I want to provoke you. Wake up. Wake up, guys. The underworld. They don't understand. He's very pissed off because his honor was betrayed. She is like thinking about what to do, whether to face the guy or not. And he's super angry. Of course. Look at the gestures, look at the theatrical. Okay, serenade. He's like, you made me look like a pulcinella, which is like a silly guy, you know, not a serious person. I'm gonna kill him. Yeah? And you did a nice serenade. Did you like it? I would like to, yeah, I would also like the fact that I can kill you. Da-da-da. And then he dies. That's it. That's it. Gone. Forever. Boom. But his honor was preserved.
È per me. È per me.
The rose, she sent a rose, the woman, and he's like, is it for me? And she said, no, this is for the dead man. And he's thinking about the rose and the gift. Honor crime, honor homicide, okay? So this is just to give you a glimpse of how they think, how the men think in the sceneggiata, and of course inside the Camorra. Yeah, okay, so, yeah. Yeah, there are many things touched upon this scene. We didn't see them all because I had to speed it up. But competition, honor, religion, because at some point before killing him, he starts doing the sign of the cross. Criminality, macho, being a macho, patriarchy, possession. And the serenade, of course, will be one of the main themes in the Neomelodic genre. This is another one. Oh, this is just a track. Okay, so this is Mario Merola in the 90s, while the other video was from the 60s. Singing with Gigi D'Alessio. Gigi D'Alessio is one of the main, most respected Italian Neomelodic singers, which became some of the Neomelodic singers became more pop Italian music. This lament, this cry. This is very typical of the Neomelodic music. Il G d'Alessio. So we can see here the beginning of a union between the sceneggiata and the Neomelodic, and eventually we arrive to we arrive to the beginning of Neomelodico. So with the decline of the classical song and the rebirth of the sceneggiata at the turn in between the late 70s and first 80s, there are new authors writing music and writing lyrics. They're not writing about the beautiful postcard Naples or like sentimentalism. They're talking about new themes, about the reality of Naples. So you have to consider that, especially during those decades, Naples was it was rich from a side, but it was very, very poor from the other side. So there was the majority of Naples, especially in the city center, it was kind of poor. And so if you're familiar with Naples, some neighborhoods like Quartiere Sanità, Quartieri Spagnoli, Forcella, those are all in the city center, and maybe people will tell you, if you go there, watch out, don't be too much laid back, just be careful, because it comes from that. Those neighborhoods used to be very poor, and now they're becoming much more gentrified, so things are changing, new restaurants opening, whatever. But still, you will see loads of people and figures related and connected socially and anthropologically to those quarters, to those neighborhoods. So songs were written in Neapolitan, not the clean Neapolitan. We're talking about the harsh Neapolitan, the strong Neapolitan, the Neapolitan spoken by Camorra gangs and spoken by the working classes of the city. And this would capture their sensitivity. They would connect and effectively with affection to these lyrics, because they would resonate these lyrics to these people. And they were connected to the difficulties of the neighborhood life. So the Neomelodic genre was considered contaminated also, because it was sung in a dirty Neapolitan dialect that was spoken by the working classes and influenced by pop and disco sounds, and avoiding completely the mandolin, but replacing it with synths. And of course, this genre deals with much darker themes than the classic songs, such as prison, underworld, drugs, difficult life in working class neighborhoods, and desperate yearning, love, and betrayal. So this is the beginning of the Neomelodic music. And here we go to here. So the first two singers are Patrizio and Nino D'Angelo. I'll be quick here. So Patrizio was the first one. He was coming from a poor neighborhood in Naples, and he made his debut in the 80s with a very famous song called, he was very young here, he was like 6 or 7, Dad, It's Christmas, Papa è Natale, where he recounts a young boy's nostalgia from his imprisoned father. So the dad is in prison.
Papà, o sai, sono venuti caso sbagliato. E certe cose non ne posso capire. Mamma ha sbagliato e tu hai ragione. Ma c'è pentita, mammarella mia.
My mom, my dad, I know I'm young, but I will grow up and I will understand the things when I'm growing up. This drama is always coming back. This is one of the main themes of Neomelodic music, the drama, the passion. I'm struggling. So, in his songs, Patrizio addressed the themes of poverty, illness, and the tragic decision to commit a crime in order to survive difficult economic times. This happens all the time. Even if you listen to other Neomelodic music, or even if you watch Gomorrah, for example, you will see these guapi, these little guys, young guys, they will say, Mom, I know I'm doing this crime, but I have to do it for you, for me, for our family, because there are no other opportunities. There's not a job. I need to find a way to survive and bring the money home. I don't care if I go to prison. I'm just doing this for the family. That's it. Which is a very common way of thinking still in some places in Naples, even today. At some point, Patrizio's songs start changing. So he starts singing not only of criminality, but also he starts addressing erotic, sentimental themes, and he starts talking about love. Love, not considered the sentimental love, but considered in a more erotic way, in a more passionate way. You have to still remember that Neomelodic music is dark. It's not coming from like a bright scene. It's very dark and it's very passionate. So in 1984, Patrizio was found dead of an overdose. His death leaves room for a new emerging name who will be considered the father of the Neomelodic genre, which is Nino D'Angelo. Nino D'Angelo, like Mario Merola did, acts and sings in scripts, so in movies, but with a very decent manner of doing it, because he doesn't want to be involved in criminality and in the underworld, but he'd rather sing about love. And all the movies of Nino D'Angelo are about love. So these are some of the beautiful covers. This is Celebrity, the disco, like the club. This is La ragazza del metro, the woman of the metro, and this is a jeans and a t-shirt. And I've been last year finally to Nino D'Angelo's concert in Naples. He's almost like 70-something now, but he was very young here. And guys, it was totally insane. There were like 2,000-3,000 Neapolitans, people crying all over, Nino, I love you! It was total amazing experience. He's considered like a king. This is still Patrizio. And this is one of the
Rispondo
scenes.
io, mamma. Pronto?
There were
Scusami se non
real
sono potuto
movies.
venire.
Risparmiati il fiato e non fare più il ragazzino.
Non riattaccare no, non finirà così. Parliamo ancora un po', ti prego amore mio.
He's doing a serenade over the phone.
Ragazzino no, non mi chiama così. Non è imparato tu, l'età non conta più, poi vuole bene per morire.
Come on. Give me another chance. Tomorrow we're gonna catch up. She's like, come on. Come back with me. Keeps going, yeah. These movies are beautiful. Like, honestly, if you have time, like, they're very heavy, but like, there are some nice pearls. Okay, let's get, and this is, of course, his biggest success, Blue Jeans and a Maglietta. There you go. It's always the same actress. It's another movie, but there's always the same actress in every Nino D'Angelo's movies. This is amazing. Very Capri. Guy. There's always a bit of competition.
Ma tu non mi dai retta, dice che sei guaglione e non la tiene ancora l'età per fare l'amore.
You say that you're too young, but you don't have the age to have sex. You're 15 years old, but you're already a woman. Even if you're young. I don't even know your name yet. But I already know that you're mine. You made me fall in love with the way you look, that you look so young. Don't make me wait anymore. The time flies very quickly. Keeps telling stuff why he is falling in love with her. Give me your mouth. Hold my hands. So you will find the movies of Nino D'Angelo and also the records sold in a separate, two different releases. Okay. Mario Merola, Nino D'Angelo, where is it? Oh, interesting. Neomelodic singers start collaborating together a lot. They do it a lot. They start doing featurings. So in this video, you will see Mario Merola, the one before from the sceneggiata, with Nino D'Angelo, a very young Nino D'Angelo, and they sing together a song from Mario Merola, which is Chiamata Napoli 081, called Naples 081, which is the prefix of the phone of Naples. And they're singing at a private wedding. This is one of the most popular activities of neomelodic singers, actual neomelodic singers also. They sing on specific occasions and celebrations, mostly weddings, birthdays, pre-18-year-olds' birthdays, serenades, and some of them, they sing to celebrate when a boss comes out from prison and comes back home. So this is why I mentioned you how much important is the Camorra, how much relevant it is in the genre. And they're doing a duet. Okay. They're singing together. They're very young. Mario Merola was already very famous. Nino, yes, but not like, yeah, okay. Very macho pattern still, but yeah. And okay, what else we got? Mario Merola sing together, yeah. Okay, let's move on. Okay, so Neomelodic music, only campaigners. Yes, oh yeah. Yeah, so the Neomelodic genre started from Naples, but it basically reached out loads of other regions from the south, also because I think they were reconnecting with the criminality words. So of course you can go to Puglia, to Bari, and you can totally meet a person listening to Neomelodic music. And you arrived also in Sicily as well. And the big innovation of the Neomelodic music is the DIY concept. So in the 90s, recording technology has improved. So they became much more accessible. There were cameras, there were like you could easily set up a recording studio. And this led to an increase in the number of young people, almost all males, who decided to pursue a Neomelodic career because it was easier. It was an easy way. You couldn't find any jobs. Okay, you can either go and work for the Camorra, or you could become a Neomelodic singer. It was very popular. You can go and sing it to the events, like weddings and other stuff. Loads of celebration will still be financed by Camorra. Loads of them. You can either accept it, you can care or not, but you can still make loads of money just with the singing. Hence, the need to be able to promote their music through new channels and tools. So we got the first cassettes, the tapes, and home-recorded CDs, and that could be distributed by a label or not. You can find many pirate labels, pirate CDs and tapes, just like copied, and but this is all good for Neomelodic singers because they can promote the music and their material and search for private engagements in parties, weddings, etc. So with the privatization of TV in Italy, there was a huge increase in private radio and TV stations that started to promote Neomelodic music. And most of them were abusive channels, illegal channels, so they weren't even registered. And you could easily find a channel inside a private flat in a house. Like you will go in a building, and on the 7th floor you will see, like, instead of a house of a person, there would be just a studio. But it was all illegal, not declared. And broadcasting programs presented by Neomelodic singers who sang and dedicated songs at the request of the home audience. So most of these channels are presented by Neomelodic singers. Some of them were very young as well, like 8, 9, 10 years old. And you will see like the singer and the number to call from home. And then they pick up the call and they're like, hey, okay, which song do you want me to sing? You request a song and they sing the song to you, and they can also make a dedication to someone you love. You want to dedicate a song to your father, you do it. And that's it. And we can see, like, for example, this is an example. We have two Neomelodic singers here. This is Alessio, which is very, very famous now. And this is Valentina OK. Valentina OK is a very important figure in the Neomelodic scene because she has been the one. The only one, the only trans person in the Neomelodic genre. She is saying hello to a lot of people. And they sing their songs. This is a song from Valentina. They were like private parties. Okay. And okay, here we go. This is another one. There you go. You got a number here. Mobile phone and fixed number. You can call Daniele De Martino and say, can you call this song? I want to dedicate it to my girlfriend. Boom. And he does it. He says, hi, this is Okay, Tulia, like, you can dedicate this song to your girlfriend Alice. Yeah, okay. Big kiss to you. There are some guests sometimes. Of course, this is a huge promotion for them because those are all local TV channels, but you have to consider that Naples lives of this. So these people will become real pop stars, real stars, huge stars. If you watch if you watch the views of some videos, they're like, look at this one, 1.8 millions. Like, those are huge stars. I need to speed it up because it's gonna take ages, I told you. Okay, so some people decide to make like marathons of this. There's Marco Calone, which is another Neomelodic singer who did like something like 6 lives in a day, 10 lives in a day. They do like tours of weddings in the whole region, like up to 10 lives. This is a medley from Anthony in a wedding. Let's watch it. I don't remember. Okay. Just to show you. Okay, it's this one probably. Yeah. I've done this too. It's quite funny actually. I've done it a couple of times, like singing at weddings, like Neomelodic music, and it's interesting. Okay, so yeah, other duets, serenades, yeah, okay, let's... Down with, this is shot with the phone, but like, I mean, this is a dance, this is like a rave in the middle of the road, like completely legal, of course. They literally... This is in the middle of the road, it's just like nearby. We will just put everything like in an hour, we mount everything, we assemble, and then we start singing, and there's a party, and then boom, that's gone. Just for a serenade. The guy is waiting with the rose. Guys, this is not a joke, this is real. The girl is coming with a veil as well. They kiss and love. Then she goes to Alessio. She's like, oh my God, Alessio, you're my favorite singer. I love you. There you go. Boom. Okay. And that can be very busy on the road as well. Yeah, these are others. I'm not gonna show you them all. We don't have time. Birthdays as well. Okay, gender identity. Okay, so yeah, this Neomelodic genre is purely male-dominated. Most of the singers, like the majority, are all cisgender straight men. There are just a few female singers like Maria Nazionale, Stefania Lei, Darendano, Nancy Coppola. We don't have many. This is definitely my favorite, which is Maria Nazionale, which is considered a star. This. We have two Marias here. Ragione and sentimento. Reason and sentiment. The reason Maria is talking to the sentiment Maria and she's saying, he's cheating on you. He doesn't respect you. He's cheating on you. That's what it says. He doesn't give a damn if you don't feel well. He's arrogant. He is not a man. But I love this man. And I can't leave him. So we have a duality, and this is another big. I keep loving him. So the Ragione, the reason one, keep saying you need to leave him. You need to stop this relationship because it's toxic. But she's suffering and struggling, but she still loves him. And I don't want to stop. Silly. Can you stop? So this is a role on gender, on the females in this culture always react like this. So if the man is considered powerful, he can go and sleep on with how many people he wants with. The woman has to be submissive and pay respect, and if the guy cheats on her, that's it, but she loves him, what can you do? So it's about sacrifice, and this is a role that is that has been applied for decades and is still reiterating into this culture. And so Neomelodic music applies extremely defining flexible gender roles, which are made even more evident by the lyrics of the song, like this, in which the term female frequently recurs. Female in Neapolitan we say femna, frequently recurs, and there is predominantly talk of jealousy, betrayal, and possession. The themes addressed reiterate an old and very recognizable pattern. There are no fluid identities, with very few exceptions, like Valentina OK, but only cisgender and heteronormative roles. I'm just going to skip this. This is like a video about a girl mother. So she's like, I'm a girl mother, and I'm very young, and stuff like that. So the figure of the feminine figure is always very submissive, while the masculine one is much stronger, has much more power. And this balance is one of the main things of the Neomelodic structure. So to me, as a non-binary person, I wanted to change these gender roles because to me they don't make any sense, of course. And this is one of the main things of my project in NZIRIA. I will show you after some of my videos, but to me it was necessary to talk about fluid identities, queer love, non-binary people, trans people, because this community hasn't been represented at all in all these decades. The only person was Valentina OK, but she died in the 2014. And beside her, there was no other representation. Here we go, femminili rituali. It's going to be quick now. Femminili rituali. So we have this picture. What is it? We have some religion here, the Holy Mary, and a femminello dancing, probably a dance called tammuriata, which is a typical Neapolitan, typical folkloristic and traditional dance coming still from Naples, but from another tradition. So, in the Neapolitan tradition, a marginal and at the same time mystical figure is historically anchored in the urban fabric of Naples, is the femminello. The femminello is defined as a male with a markedly and naturally feminine expressiveness, a cultural and social identity surrounded by prejudice, but also by mystery, fortune, and rituality. All this is connected to the ancestral cult of the Great Mother or Cybele, creating a bridge between the sacred and the pagan. So these figures are very controversial because Naples is extremely, as you can see, like the patterns of the guy that is super powerful and macho, and the woman that is submissive and has to pay respect to the man. The femminello stays exactly in between. So they are considered, they're marginalized, of course, also because being a trans person in Naples in the 60s, in the 70s, it wouldn't give you much opportunities. There weren't job opportunities to non-trans people. So imagine to trans people how hard it was to find job opportunities. So Of course, they were all coming from, and they were living in very poor neighborhoods. But this, when you are in a poor neighborhood, this is where you can also find new other ways to survive. And this is where all the rituality comes as well. Actually, the figure of the Femminello is much more ancient, and it's connected, as I said here, to the Great Mother, and eventually to the myth of the Holy Mary in Monte Vergine, which is here. It says, every year on the 2nd of February, it's going to happen even this year, but I will be performing in CTM at the How To. A series of buses from all over Campania head to the sanctuary of Monte Vergine in the province of Avellino, which is nearby Naples, to celebrate the Madonna of the homonymous shrine, also known as Mamma Schiavona. This occasion is called Candelora, but also Aiuta dei Femminelli, as the Madonna of Monte Vergine is considered the patron mother of the LGBTQ+ community. I didn't translate this. Okay. So there was a legend that says that in the 1256, the Holy Mary made a miracle and freed the two homosexual people that were basically attached to a tree. And the day that happened, it was the 2nd of February. So from that on, she is considered the Holy Mary the protector of the community, queer community. And I'm gonna quickly show you some videos of this. Yeah.
Mia sorella mi mise a giocare e mio padre mi sgridò. Disse, ma cosa fai? Papà, voglio le bambole, non voglio la chitarra, mi sento donna. Mi sono prostituita perché dovevo campare. Andavo. La tombola scostumata è la vera tombola napoletana con delle parolacce vicino. Dammi il nuovo singoppa sotto!
She is, I don't think she's actually, there is a mistake in this video because she is considered a femminello, but she is a trans person. The femminello is mostly a non-binary person coming from a male gender, biological male gender, but is non-binary. While while the masculillo, for example, is the opposite. So I could consider myself a masculillo. My biological gender is female, but I consider myself non-binary. So this person is considered a trans woman, so not a femminello. But it's very subjective as well. Some people, even if they are non-binary in Naples, they don't consider themselves a femminello. So it's all connected to the social roots behind it. And if you want to engage with the idea, because this is something that somehow is disappearing now. People consider themselves trans or non-binary. They don't call themselves anymore femminello. So there's a very important and relevant anthropological and social aspect behind it. And as you can see, in this video, this person is playing the tombola. The tombola is one of the rituals of these femminelli, which is basically the game of the bingo, but that was born in Naples. There are 90 numbers, you pick up one, and for every number, there's another figure connected to that. There's an image of that. Most of the time, in this tombola, which normally it's not considered naughty or dirty, with this type of tombola run by the femminelli, because they're considered lucky, the femminello extracts a number and then it tells an anecdote that is always has a sexual connotation. This is why it's called naughty or dirty. And they talk in dialect.
Ritiriamo la tombola e portiamo fortuna.
We bring luck. 10. So this is one. Okay, I'm going to quickly show you the Madonna dei Femminelli.
Della Madonna salgono da Mamma Schiavona, come viene chiamata la
madre di Gesù,
of the Candelora in
Monte Vergine.
Di ogni età.
This is Marcello Colassurdo, which is one of the most important singers for Tamurriata, which is the typical dance that they and typical music that they perform during the Candelora.
dei sessi, condanne femminili.
La Madonna,
Okay, really have to speed up. Sorry, there you go. There are typical instruments. There you go. They are doing Tamurriata. When you do like this is Tamurriata. This is the percussion is called Tamorra, and it's connected to this, which is a binary rhythm, and it's the Tamurriata.
E io vengo ogni anno perché la mamma schiavone.
This is a femminello.
La Madonna che c'è da Fanarazzi.
So it's interesting that we have sacred and pagan at the same time. These are some pictures from Femminelli. This is Marcello Colassurdo, the singer that we saw before in a Candelora procession in the 2008. And we have here the rituals around the Femminelli. So this one is the figliata, the birth, where basically they pretend to give birth, and then eventually they give birth to a little baby with a huge dick. And yeah, and this is all a ritual that comes from far, but it's still happening in some places. This is a masculine wedding, o sposalizio masculino, and where basically it's a celebration of a wedding. It's not official, but it's interesting the community that completely supports this celebration. And you can see in these pictures as well. There is a wedding. They pretend to have a wedding. There is also a man doing this. And it becomes just like a big party in the middle of the roads and in the middle of the neighborhoods. And it's the interesting bit that inspired me for my project was the participation of the community and the support, which is something very strong in the Neapolitan culture. This is the tombola scostumata. As you can see, there are other videos. These are all the numbers with all the meanings. And then eventually, we're almost done. Tarantella and Arco, the ritual performance. So there are two dances that have their roots in Campania, the Tarantella and Tamurriata. The Neapolitan Tarantella originated in the 17th century. It is a popular dance generally danced in pairs, so it is presumed to be linked to mating rituals and wedding rituals. The Tarantella is actually thought to be what remains of some very ancient pagan rituals and connected to the cult of Dionysus, god of wine and drunkenness, who later became Bacchus in the Roman times. And they basically these dances took place, these rituals took place through dances, songs, and they were connotated by a sexual nature. And so it originated as a pagan ritual, but then with the advent of Christianity, it became that repressed basically every pagan religion. These rituals were transformed and reworked as Christian folk dances. This happened to the Tarantella and to the Tamurriata as well. When you saw in the previous video, there were the people dancing with the, don't remember what you call the nacchere, but they were doing this. They were doing it for the Candelora, so for the celebration of the Holy Mary, protector of the Femminelli. And this is the Tamurriata, which is still a popular dance in Campania, born nearby Naples. The rhythm is binary, and it's beaten by the tamorra, which are the percussion that I just showed you before. And these are the other instruments, very simple instruments. And then this comes from still the Greek culture and the Greek influence. There are actually seven types of Tamurriata, because depending where you are, depending which area, there's a Holy Mary connected to a specific type of Tamurriata, which is different from each other. There are 7 sisters, the Madonna dell'Arco, Madonna Castello, Madonna delle Galline, which is another Holy Mary connected to the queer community. The Madonna dei Bagni, the Madonna dell'Avvocata, Madonna di Montevergine, which is the Candelora, the one we just saw before, and the Madonna di Briano. Various styles of gestures and the message conveyed correspond to these 7 Madonnas: courtship, combat, and playful dance. The main instrument is the tamorra, and quickly some videos. This is the tombola. This is the tarantella. It's more of a jumpy thing, and they do this with the wrist, and they do this. And it's much more melodic. And this is still a tarantella. Yeah, you can see that the gestures are always the same. And they jump. Well, the tamuriata is this one. Much more percussive. This is the gesture. And they have the things in the hands, the instruments in the hands, which are like the Spanish one. This is another tamuriata. They're all different, depending on where they come from. They are like gangs called paranze, which are the groups of people that play. So that said, for me, the connection, especially because of the Dionysian nature of these dances between tarantella and hardcore, was quite natural, considering that I have, when I was 12, 13, I had a big passion for hardcore. I somehow reconnected the tarantella to this. And to me, the connection was very natural. I was like, why don't I make a tarantella, but a gabber tarantella? Because we still have these things of the legs jumping around. And so, being in the north of Italy, in the Romagna region, near the Riviera, which were basically full of clubs and discos, I spent loads of my young years, let's say, on the Riviera, especially like these are pictures from the club, a very famous club called Cocorico. Yeah, that influenced me a lot. And they used to play hardcore as well. They used to play techno, trance, whatever. And to me, it was a big thing. And so with this project in Syria, I decided to grab all this culture, all this research that I made with the Neomelodic music, with the incorporation of the femminelli, and I wanted to mix it with something completely different and completely far from that culture. And I wanted to merge my roots. So north, I was born in the north, so I wanted to mix with my northern culture, my club culture in Cocorico and on the Riviera, with my southern roots. And to me, it was extremely important. And I found that the connection could happen starting from hardcore and tarantella. And so quickly, these are some of the works that I've done. This is my album, Hybrid, released on Never Sleep last year. This is our tarantella. These guys are wearing masks of Pulcinella, which is the mask of Naples. And this is Amancora, which is me singing in a wedding.
Guardo rindo specchi e casami, lo segno me basta per capire che non ci sta, che niente va.
And skip just to the chorus. And you will see Queer Love. And pretty much that's it. So I've been trying to reproduce a new melodic wedding with new melodic music, contemporary, talking about fluid identities, queer love. And this is what I've done so far. Thank you for listening and for your attention. Thanks. Thank you. And apologies if I was super late and I don't even know what time it is. Thank you. It's quite late. Sorry. Yeah. Thank you.
Unfortunately, we don't have time for a Q&A anymore,
I can bet.
but you can all see NZIRIA and this project and a site-specific work on Thursday at 7 at Hout 2. So see you all there. And
First at 7? First at 7?
Thursday at 7, I thought?
The 2nd of February.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's Thursday.
Oh, it's Thursday. Yeah, it's Thursday. Yeah. Sorry.
Thursday, the 2nd of February, 7 p.m. Hout 2. And then we can probably continue the talk after your performance. So thank you all so much. And thank you, NZIRIA.
Thank you.